The obscure ways of the Nazi treasure in Argentina. Stories of mysterious lights from the Atlantic coast, signs of sunken submarines that were bringing ingots into clandestine operations, intimate relations with political, economic, and religious power, international threats and espionage are only part of the framework that weaves the history of the Nazi spoils destiny that arrived in Argentina before the fall of Hitler. Numerous books, researches and films told of the steps taken by Argentina and Brazil by the sinister medical doctor of Auschwitz, Joseph Mengele, as well as by Otto Adolf Eichmann, one of the top leaders of Nazism. These emblematic cases are not only unique, and it is known that many other Holocaust participants chose South America to hide from the world condemnation, but did they come alone? Where did all the accumulated capitals go? How to hide the evidence of looting? Every empire has strategies that allowed it to reach, maintain, and execute power, also have them at the time of the fall. Towards the end of World War II, perhaps after 1943, when Hitler's army was defeated in Stalingrad, which marked one of the major turning points in the war, the Third Reich began to design a flight plan that allowed its members not only to flee far from Europe, but to put in safeguard all the capital accumulated during the years of power. Because in addition to the aberrant extermination of millions of Jews, the Nazis managed to obtain an invaluable treasure trove of belongings, gold, jewels, works of art and everything stolen from families devastated in the Holocaust. Many countries in South America seemed to be a good destination to hide the Nazi booty, since they were a little more distant from the direct impact that the war had generated in the rest of the world. However, Argentina had two particular attractions. It was the only country that had remained neutral, and did so until shortly before the end of the conflict, when the victory of the Allies exerted a very difficult pressure to evade political costs. On the other hand, counted on all the Patagonian territory, its great extensions and silences. Juan Domingo Perón was one of the key pieces of this network because of the close relations he maintained with Nazi Germany even before his first presidency, while still Minister of War of the military government. Also by the already mentioned neutrality that the country adopted until the end of the fight, and because many personages of extreme closeness to Perón appear linked to the hierarchs Nazis responsible for triangular money with companies and banks. And, finally, because of the lack of control over open-door policies, which allowed thousands of poor Austrians, Germans, and Croats to flee the hungry Europe, but also made false war criminals. Although few people are encouraged to affirm with certainty the concrete ties that were established, Perón's direct responsibilities and the possible advantages he has gained in this triangulation with Hitler's Germany, there are also very few who deny this relationship, even though account the complexity of the time. War boot. Talking about what Nazism stole is often very painful for the Jewish community. It involves rethinking their own stories and reopening wounds to the bone, the terrible fate of their families. Because the fortune of the treasury of Nazi Germany, $40 billion is spoken, was built not only from the looting of wealthy families, but also from everything that stripped the Jewish people in concentration camps, gold teeth, alliances, watches, among other things. Everything collected during the Holocaust is impossible to declare without approaching the horror. Hence the urgency to hide it, to give it cause for the world, hiding face and destiny. Last year, in northern Germany, an archaeologist found buried 2 gold-bearing sacks from the Third Reich. For its part, the government of Poland declared that the researchers found a tunnel in Wałbrzych that would hide great amount of Nazi gold. The world press and the authorities in general immediately paid attention to this, because although they seem a plot of fiction, this fact moves very unhappy threads of German history that must be clarified. In Argentina, according to the testimonies of the inhabitants of the Atlantic Patagonia who was able to gather with quality, among other investigators of the subject, the journalist Mario Markic in his written and audio-visual works, the gold arrived and submarines that entered after the end of the Second War World. With the passage of time, wrecks appeared that merited the opening of investigations with professional diverse and great work teams, and although they did not manage to finish unveiling the mystery, such investigation requires a large budget, they served to accompany scientifically the collective story. But of course, this was not the only way the Third Reich found to conceal the great accumulated capital for the world, and also for Argentina, represents only a small part of what they managed to mobilize. And it is here that other more powerful actors, such as banks, companies, and politicians, have come into play that allowed one of the most transcendental money laundering events to take place. Much of this evidence appears in the intelligence files of the Allied armies on the movements that existed between Argentina and Germany. The U.S. imperialist report compromised companies with Nazi espionage. At that time the flight of hierarchies and capitals was taking place, and this new route of gold was going to be increasingly important in the war, reveals Jorge Camarasa at the beginning of the documentary Nazi Oro in Argentina, which, along with valuable testimonies, such as those of Jean Ziegler, Beatriz Gurevich, and Yuki Goni, give life to one of the most profound investigations on the subject so far. These facts, both the incredible stories of submarines and the perverse plots of power, can also be reflected in the documentary El Escape to Hitler. The filmmaker Matthias Guilbert, released in 2011, referring to the investigations of the historian German Gabi Weber, who makes impressive denunciations of how they entered Argentina and which destination had part of these capitals. For those who are interested in this fabulous plot, The Washing of Nazi Money in Argentina, by the same author, helps to complete the information. The investigation. This month, January 2017, Netflix added the documentary Oro Nazi en Argentina, a production of HBO, directed by the filmmaker Rollo Pereira and based on the book Odessa to the South of the aforementioned Jorge Camarasa. Although the material is a few years old, it was released at the end of 2004, it brings together elements and testimonies of a forcefulness that make it profoundly present not only because it is backed by an investigation of more than 10 years, but also by the diversity of testimonies and documentation which reveals. In it you can see how companies and banks, through espionage and political ties, were gaining ground in the country to bring in Nazi-born capitals taking advantage of the needs of the country and the personal interests of high government officials. The documentary advances and categorical when linking Swiss banks, Eva Peron herself, her controversial brother Juan Duarte and the Vatican in the incredible plot behind the gold stolen during the obscure times of the Holocaust. Simultaneously it suggests that this is only a part of history and that the links of Nazism with Argentina survived the Peronist government and continued to advance strongly during later governments.